I want to become a zombie and start apocalypse. I didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy the world. It wasn't that simple. These things never are. No, it took years. Years of watching the world rot from the inside out. The corruption, the greed, the endless lies. Every day, another headline reminded me that humanity didn't deserve this planet. Wars fought over nothing. Forests burned for profit. People dying in the streets while billionaires built their palaces in the sky. I used to care. I really did. I marched in protests. I donated what little I had. I tried to believe that we could change, but nothing changed. And one day, I stopped caring. It wasn't sadness that consumed me. It was rage. A quiet, simmering rage that grew with every passing day. I wanted the world to suffer. I wanted it to feel the same hopelessness I'd felt, the same despair that had chewed me up and spit me out. And that's when the idea came to me. The apocalypse, the ultimate reset button, and I would be the one to push it. Zombies had always fascinated me. Not in the way they fascinated most people, though. I wasn't watching horror movies for cheap thrills or playing video games to blow off steam. For me, zombies were something more, an idea, a symbol. They weren't just mindless monsters. They were freedom, no guilt, no regret, no pain, just hunger. Simple, pure hunger. I started researching late at night, scouring forums and dark corners of the internet. Most of it was nonsense, urban legends, conspiracy theories, garbage from people who didn't know what they were talking about. But then I found it, a single thread buried deep in a survivalist forum. The title was innocuous enough, strange outbreak in rural villages. But the contents made my heart race. A handful of posts detailed stories of a virus, something so aggressive it defied nature. Victims didn't just die, they came back. And they didn't come back normal. They came back hungry. No one called it a zombie virus, of course. They called it something scientific, something sterile. But I knew what it was. I read every word, piecing together the locations of the supposed outbreaks, following leads until I found what I was looking for. There was a village, a real, documented place. Quarantined, abandoned, forgotten. And somewhere inside, the virus was still alive. It wasn't just a theory anymore. It was real, and it was mine. Getting there wasn't easy. The village was deep in the mountains, far from civilization. The road had been blocked off years ago, but that didn't stop me. I packed what I needed: food, water, a crowbar, and a small camera to document the beginning of the end. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Who would I tell? I didn't have friends. My family had stopped speaking to me years ago, back when I'd started ranting about how humanity was a cancer. I didn't need them. I reached the village at dusk. It was everything I'd imagined: silent, decayed, frozen in time. The houses were little more than skeletons, their walls eaten away by time and weather. The air smelled of rot and earth, thick and suffocating. And then there were the bodies. They were scattered across the streets, half buried in the dirt, their faces twisted into expressions of agony. Some were missing limbs, others had been torn apart, their bones picked clean. But the strangest part, they weren't decomposed. It was as if they died yesterday. I found it in the basement of a crumbling house. The infection. At first, I wasn't sure what I was looking at. There were jars, dozens of them, lined up on shelves, each one filled with a thick black liquid. The liquid writhed and bubbled, as though it were alive. And in the center of the room, there was a body. It wasn't like the others. This one was fresh, its skin pale and glistening, its chest rising and falling with shallow, labored breaths. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. The thing opened its eyes, milky white and unfocused, and let out a low, guttural moan. This was it. I picked up one of the jars, the liquid sloshing inside. It felt warm in my hands, almost alive. My hands trembled as I unscrewed the lid, the smell of decay hitting me like a wave. And then I drank it. The pain was immediate. It started in my stomach, a burning sensation that spread like wildfire. My veins felt like they were on fire, my muscles twisting and contorting as though something inside me was trying to tear its way out. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. My vision blurred, the room spinning around me. And then the hunger hit. It was like nothing I'd ever felt before, an all-consuming, gnawing need that drowned out everything else. My thoughts, my memories, my very identity, all of it was swallowed by the hunger. I stumbled to my feet, my limbs jerking with unnatural movements. My reflection in a shattered mirror caught my eye, and I froze. My skin was pale, my veins black and bulging. My eyes were sunken, glowing faintly in the dim light. I wasn't human anymore, and I loved it. I didn't think when I attacked. The man was a hiker, someone who had wandered too close to the village. He didn't see me coming. One moment, he was adjusting his pack. The next, I was on him, my teeth sinking into his flesh. The blood was warm, sweet, intoxicating, It flowed down my throat like liquid fire, feeding the hunger that had taken hold of me. He screamed, but it didn't matter. His screams were music to my ears. By the time I was finished, he wasn't a man anymore. He was like me. It didn't take long for the infection to spread. The hiker stumbled into the nearest town, his wounds festering, his mind lost to the hunger. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. The infection tore through the population like wildfire, turning friends into monsters, neighbors into predators. The streets were filled with chaos, screams, gunfire, the sound of flesh being torn apart, and I watched it all with glee. This was what I'd wanted. The evil world is finally burning. But then, something changed. I started to remember. Fragments of my humanity clawed their way to the surface. Memories of laughter, of love, of all the things I tried to forget. The hunger didn't go away, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. Guilt, regret, sorrow. They came rushing back, drowning me in their weight. And then I saw him, Andrew Tate. He was standing in the middle of the chaos, his eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Anger, sadness, maybe both. "You think you're in control," he said, his voice cold. "But you're just a pawn." "What are you talking about?" I snarled. Andrew closer, his gaze piercing. "You didn't start this. You were just the first." Andrew's words echoed in my mind. "You didn't start this. You were just the first." The chaos around us raged on. Screams, fires, the sound of breaking glass. I could feel the infection spreading like wildfire. Each new zombie connected to me in a way I couldn't explain. It was as though they were extensions of myself, moving, hungering, killing, and yet the hunger inside me was louder, stronger. "What do you mean I'm the first?" I asked, my voice ragged, my vision blurring. Andrew stepped closer, his expression a mix of anger and pity. "The virus wasn't meant for the world, it was meant for you." My chest tightened. "That doesn't make sense. I chose this. I wanted this." Andrew shook his head. "No, you didn't. You were chosen. The virus, whatever it is, was waiting for someone like you. Someone angry enough, desperate enough to spread it willingly." I stumbled back, the weight of his words crushing me. I thought I'd been in control. I thought this was my apocalypse, but it wasn't. In the days that followed, I noticed changes, things I couldn't ignore. The hunger was different now. It wasn't just a need for flesh and blood. It was something deeper, something primal. When I fed, I didn't just consume, I absorbed. Memories, thoughts, emotions, they all became part of me. Each victim's life flashed through my mind in vivid, painful detail. Their hopes, their fears, their last desperate moments, all of it became mine. It was intoxicating and horrifying all at once. And then there were the dreams. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing, a black void, endless and empty, and in the center, a figure. It was massive, its form shifting and writhing like smoke, its eyes glowing with a light that felt ancient. It spoke in whispers, its voice reverberating through my skull. "You are my vessel, my herald, my seed in the flesh." I woke each time drenched in sweat, the hunger clawing at me stronger than before. Something was inside me, something far worse than the virus. The infection spread faster than anyone could have predicted. Entire cities fell within days, their populations consumed and turned. Governments collapsed, communication networks went dark, and the world descended into chaos. But I wasn't satisfied. The hunger inside me wasn't just personal anymore. It demanded more, driving me to push the infection further, faster. I wandered from city to city, leading hordes of zombies like a twisted shepherd, watching as they consumed everything in their path. Andrew followed me, always just out of reach. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of him in the distance, his face grim, his eyes heavy with sorrow. He wasn't trying to stop me, not yet, but I knew the confrontation was coming. It happened in what was left of New York City. The streets were unrecognizable, choked with rubble and the rotting bodies of the infected. Fires burned unchecked, casting the skyline in an eerie orange glow. I was standing in the middle of Times Square, my horde surrounding me, when Andrew appeared. He stepped out from the shadows, alone, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "It doesn't have to end like this," he said, his voice steady. I laughed, a low, guttural sound that didn't feel like my own. "End? Andrew, this is just the beginning." He shook his head, sadness flickering in his eyes. "You don't understand what's happening to you. The thing inside you, it's not you, it's using you." "I know exactly what it is," I snapped. "It's evolution. It's the cure to humanity's disease." Andrew sighed, lowering his hands. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said. Before I could respond, he lunged at me. Andrew was faster than I expected, stronger too. He moved like a man who'd spent centuries fighting, his strikes precise and devastating. But I wasn't human anymore. I was stronger, faster, and the virus inside me made sure I didn't feel pain. We fought like animals, clawing and tearing at each other, our bodies colliding with enough force to shatter concrete. "You're not stopping this," I snarled, slamming him into the side of a burning car. Andrew coughed, blood dripping from his mouth. "This isn't you," he said, his voice weak but defiant. "You're still in there. I know you are." For a moment, his words gave me pause. Memories of who I used to be flashed through my mind. Protests, laughter, the belief that the world could be saved. But then, the hunger surged, drowning everything else out. "You're wrong," I said, my voice low. "This is who I've always been." I stood over Andrew, his body broken and bloodied, the hunger clawing at me to finish it. But before I could strike, the sky darkened. A familiar void spread across the horizon, swallowing the light. And in the center of it, the figure from my dreams appeared. It was massive, its form blotting out the stars, its voice reverberating through the air. "You have done well, my herald," it said, its glowing eyes fixed on me. Andrew stared up at it, his face pale with horror. "You don't know what you've unleashed," he whispered. The figure reached out, its shadowy hand passing through my chest. I felt a surge of power unlike anything I'd ever known, fire and ice coursing through my veins, the hunger consuming me entirely. When the hand withdrew, I was no longer just infected, I was the virus itself. The figure vanished, its task complete, leaving me alone in the ruins of the world. I looked down at Andrew, his body broken but his eyes defiant. "You fought so hard to stop this," I said, my voice echoing with a power that wasn't mine. "But you were never going to win," he smiled faintly, blood staining his teeth. "You think you're free," he said, "but you're just another pawn, just like me." For a moment his words stung, but then the hunger surged and I stopped caring. The world wasn't mine to destroy anymore. It was mine to control. And as the infection spread across the final corners of the earth, I smiled, because I did what I always wanted to. Well, that was pretty much it. I hope you liked the story till then. Bye-bye.